Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Super Q&A, where I answer basically every question that's been given to me and try and give it as detailed answers as possible, and we run a fair bit, I would say, over time. Unfortunately, I've already recorded this video, and I accidentally deleted the final thing. I was saving it for a rainy day, and then on said rainy day, it wasn't there. So I'm going back through. The last one we saw of these, therefore, was quite a while ago, but we are checking out every single one. The first question comes from Keno Arkin. Now, a minute ago, I said I answer every question. That's true. This is not exactly the same as the regular Q&A. I'm getting these questions specifically from Patreon, which is beneficial for numerous ways. It gives something nice to people who support over there, as well as, you know, it won't open this ridiculous floodgate I can never keep up with. There's a link in the description to that if you guys want to check it out. But let's go to the first question from Keno Arkin, who says, "Hey WP, you might talk about this in a future video." This is an old question, by the way, guys. But I'm eager to know. He says, "You mentioned that ArenaNet took decisions with the story that were just badly executed and killed any interest in future developments of the story for you. In your opinion, what mistakes were these? What is your opinion on the personal story of Heart of Thorns? And which element was handled the worst in your opinion?" Me, I think the worst part was Air's death. She's supposed to be this huge character within Gw2's story. At least she first gathered and created Destiny's Edge, was key in several events of the books, and she was a big part of the core Gw2 personal story. And what did we get? Just press F to honor her. And I was expecting a bit more of a glorious goodbye funeral, especially for Anon. This question actually came in before I did my story review, which basically addresses all of this stuff. Yeah, I'm very disappointed in the plot, and I've definitely felt a bit of a kickback from that. I went through and did some more achievements quite recently, which I haven't talked to you guys about on the channel, and was pretty happy to see that one of the achievements from one of the Rata Novus, or the Rata Novus instance, actually has you finding an alternate exit to the city, and kind of hints at, you know, that giant Asuran structure just off the map. You kind of actually walk near there. That's pretty cool. But really, I'm finding myself not too excited. The place I'm most excited about the plot is just the raid, because they set up a good mystery, and the rest of the stuff, it's like we have no guarantee that Season 3 is coming anytime particularly soon, that the quantity in Season 3 is going to be any better than Season 2, and, you know, I just very keenly and acutely remember the long wait between updates there, so I'm just not that excited. One thing I will say to touch on my review, I really think that sums the whole thing up, looking back in retrospect to all the points, to gather it all up, the main issue with Heart of Thorns' story was a lack of quantity. That's really all I have to say. Like, the actual implementation of a lot of the plot was the best we've had in Guild Wars 2 so far. You can't argue against that. In fact, it's the best we've seen in the franchise so far. It's very easy to forget about how poorly told a lot of the Guild Wars 1 story was, and the vast difference of worlds we live in without all the, you know, the blocks of unvoiced quest text and so forth. But it really just comes up to a lack of quantity. If the story had been like twice as long, at least, as it eventually was, and we had even more places to explore, I think I'd look back a lot more positively. But that's really what, in the end, it absolutely came down to. There just wasn't very much there. I'm actually planning on having another video coming out soon, guys. I've been working on the background a long time about how I believe with very little resources, or whatever reason causes us to have such a low quantity of story, ArenaNet can still do a lot of world building and give us a lot of plot in the game, and it's going to be kind of like a follow-up to the review. It's been in the works for a long time now, though, so it will slowly come out eventually. Next question is from Sue, who said, "I haven't played Heart of Thorns yet. For some reason, it's just not appealing to me. What do you think I'd be missing if I decide not to play?" You'd be missing some pretty incredible maps. You'd be missing fun elements to the classes. I do think that they've bundled into the elite specializations through the new engine things and the cascading skills and so on. They have added a lot of new really cool stuff. It depends the class you play, of course, and the mode you play. For example, if you're a warrior in mainly in PvP, I mean, you might not care that much. Like, do you care about Stronghold? And do you care about the Berserker? Since nobody's really playing Warrior at the moment, does it matter? So, I mean, there are going to be situations like that. It depends on specifically your playstyle. But I do think it offers some really great gameplay. It's just the quantity's not there right now. And maybe Heart of Thorns will be a much better purchase about a year from now, or maybe even 2 years from now. I know that seems like a really long time scale, but I don't think we should underappreciate how much of Heart of Thorns is coming through the Living World updates. So if you think of it this way, guys, right? We had the core release of the game, Season 1, Season 2, and then Heart of Thorns. In theory, we're going to get Season 1, Season 2, and then maybe another expansion, right? But if Season 3 adds 2 maps, just like Season 2 did, and then Season 4 adds 2 maps, well, then that's the Living World adding 4 open world PvE maps, just like the actual expansions. So it's kind of like they're going to double the size of the expansion just through the Living World, in a weird way, if you're very optimistic. And then I think you'd be missing out on even more if you decide not to play it. I would still, despite my lack of joy about the story stuff, absolutely say it's 100% worth the money, because at the end of the day, it's a big game, and the reason the story wasn't that amazing is because all the resources were put into other facets of the game, which did turn out incredible to me and have really captured my attention for a long time, even though it's waned a little bit now. So I do still think it's a worthwhile product to buy. I think that's something a lot of people really struggle to get their heads around. They think, if one part of something's bad, then they have to pan the whole thing, like it's either one extreme or the other. It doesn't have to be that way, But anyway, next question is from Panot, or Pano, if we go for the fancy French way. Hello, Mr. Woodpots. This contains a spoiler, so you can skip it if I don't want to spoil people. I think we're okay with spoilers for now. They say, at the end of Heart of Thorns, the egg seems to react to the death of Mordramoth. Does it mean that we could be fighting Glint's child as the next Elder Dragon? If so, it means Glint's child would become an Elder Dragon and all the effort of protecting the egg backfires. Is one of the things that disappointed you in the Heart of Thorns story? No, actually, I'm not sure where this comes from. It's come up quite a lot from people, and I just don't know why. What you have to appreciate is magic, Interior. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just because it was coalesced, just because it was all pulled together in Mordramoth. Once Mordramoth's dead, that magic is just magic. And, even before Heart of Thorns came out through the Living World story, they quite clearly set up this idea that when an Elder Dragon dies, magic spills everywhere. It could be dangerous, and we're probably gonna, absorb this magic into, say, Glint's offspring, so we can have an allied powerful dragon. And we've basically the solution to this problem of, okay, Elder Dragons are terrible, destructive, but we need Elder Dragons to balance magic, which would go out of control because it's also crazy and destructive. How do we have our cake and eat it too? That's the big question of the franchise, right? Through the Oblivion storyline that will take us many, many years to come. And the idea is, so it would seem Glint's legacy, Glint's idea to solve this problem is you still have Elder Dragons, you still have them, but you have nice ones, and you have intelligent ones, and you have ones that can empathize with living creatures and do what they do non-destructively. And there's actually a lot of nuances and cool things about that story. Where do we find these allied Elder Dragons? What makes Glint's legacy so special? What about Gleam as well, while we're at it? But even, let's assume that you do get a nice, happy Elder Dragon that's willing to do the job. There's still actually decent story, because one way or another, you've got to slice it in some direction that the races of Tyria have too much magic right now, and the ambient levels of magic are growing and growing and growing, and that needs to be culled away, and we need to take the power away from people. And even if you have a nice, friendly, reasonable Elder Dragon that is empathetic, it's going to have to take power from people, and there could be great stories therein as well. Why, as well, for what it's worth, are the existing 6 Elder Dragons so mindless, it would seem, and so angry? Why are these guys the way that they are if there's a potential to have nice Elder Dragons? Is the idea that, once upon a time, Kralkatorrik was this careful, considerate, discerning creature that was trying to keep a healthy balance of magic around the world, but in the end, people went to war with it. It could never be seen as the nice guy, right? Basically the estranged politician trying to do the good of the people, but the people can't see it for themselves. They uprise against him, he loses his mind, he gets angry. Maybe it's the aggression of trying to balance 6 Elder Dragons all doing this job all at once that eventually causes the issues. So there's a lot of great stories for really long down the road there, and I really don't think that the end cutscene we saw, where Glint's child or the egg seems to take some of Mordramoth's magic, pushes that story in a bad way or anything. I don't think that means that Glint's child's going to be evil. Is Cormyr evil just because she took Abaddon's magic? No. Cormyr is Abaddon's magic, but she's still Cormyr. She still, knows what she wants, and she operates very differently to that guy. So yeah, that's hopefully a nice insight for you guys as well into the Oblivion story. Why I'm so excited about it. If you're wondering why the term Oblivion for the story has sort of been thrown around, it's because of Mordramoth's dialogue at the end of the game, where he's consistently I think the word Oblivion appears more than once. Maybe it doesn't. But he consistently talks about the idea of people falling into oblivion. And he has some great dialogue hinting at all of this stuff. Seems like the A game, the end goal for the plot. Alright, moving on. Oh, the plot so far, at least. Then maybe we can get to some other good stuff. You're motivated by races and people and whatnot. Like you have in other franchises. Okay. Next question is from Sweaty Pyro, who says, what do you think it would take for ArenaNet to increase the volume of lore-related content in the game? I'm saying this as a person who would have loved more than just 4 acts from Heart of Thorns. Alright, well, this absolutely touches on the follow-up to the review video I'm going to do, or have already been working on. I have 3 large concepts for allowing the devs to put in a lot more lore, a lot more world building, a lot more text, a lot more intrigue for your average player, rope a lot more people into the lore, and allow them to properly tell more story. I have 3 major ideas, and then I actually have a few little tweaks and things that I think the UI could use, and just general design of dynamic events and the way they handle certain things that allow them to tell a lot more story without so much effort. Because right now, one of the reasons we didn't get so much for Heart of Thorns, it's because there is so much that has to go into every little bit of information they tell us. It all has to be packaged into these beautifully well-paced, certain length missions that only have so much dialogue, only have so much exposition on each character so the pacing doesn't go off, have to be voice acted by multiple races and and people every single time. And then when you're looking away from the personal story stuff that they added, they've got all these restrictions as well based on how dynamic events work and how immediate they have to be. And, they just dropped a ton of opportunities, loads of opportunities. It wouldn't have been a difficult thing for them to add lore about elite specializing, about the dragon hunters, about the chronomancers, and the potential connection that the chronomancers could have had to that elite mesmer society we heard Casimir was once associated with regard to the Tower of Nightmares. It wouldn't have been hard to have given us some lore about Ritlock in the Mists, even while preserving the mystery, but at least, to explain a bit more about how people become revenants or even heralds beyond that. It wouldn't have been hard to have done this stuff and basically built a lot more. My main 3 concepts, I'll say, and I'm going to go into big detail on this upcoming video. One of them is a bestiary, and that might sound really kind of plain and boring to you guys. It's more of kind of like a codexy idea. I've done a lot of information about it already on some of my recent streams. It's something I'm very excited about. That's my most finished one at the moment. But in addition to this, also, I believe that there is a format of questing, so to speak, or doing side stories or giving information that doesn't rely on, arbitrarily rely on collections to tell stories in just the worst way possible. Just terrible design there. And then the third and final major feature that I would love to see come into the game is lore books, seriously well-supported lore books that allow a dev who is enthused about the universe, about the lore, and I would hope that they have people employed who genuinely are, right, to sit down on a lunch break and write a couple of paragraphs, right? 5 to 6, maybe 7 paragraphs of information about some topic, any topic that captures their fancy at all. Poems, biographies or autobiographies, short stories, whatever they like, right? About the story, and actually have meaningful, easy ways of implementing the game that get around all these restrictions of voice acting and stuff. Anyway, so those would be the 3 major features, and I think when all of them would be in, there'd be a lot of impressive stuff. But I'll wait until that video to convince you guys on that topic. Next over, we have Ryan, who says, "Hi WP, I agree with your statement that the story was seriously disappointing. As you guys can see, when a lot of these questions came in, a lot of people were very much into the story. Was serious, but I'm not going to skip anybody. All that heavy foreshadowing from Season 2 indicating that there was something weirder and more profoundly cosmic going on than simply fighting some dragons seemed to be totally dropped, while there was almost no new information or mysteries about which to speculate. I feel like I have no idea where the story's going in the worst possible way. Did I badly miss something, or has nuance and depth been thrown out of the window?" I don't believe it has. The basic fact is this, guys. There's basically nothing in Heart of Thorns, right? And there's a good side of that and a bad side of that. The bad side is that we don't get any developments on any of the mysteries or nuance or depth, right, that you're talking about. But that also doesn't mean it's been thrown out of the window. Just the existence of the last cutscene showing the magic and whatever. I do think that the devs are still going for that story. I don't disrespect them so much to think that they'd randomly drop all their setups from Season 2 to the That just didn't happen. Just because they didn't touch on any of it in the expansion when they should have. Doesn't mean they've got rid of it entirely. It just means they let scope get away from them again in the opposite direction now, right? Like a launch, they tried to do too much. In this game, they tried to do too little. Or they tried to do more and then they got rushed at the end. I don't know. But my point is that even though a lot of this depth and nuance and stuff wasn't in the expansion, it doesn't mean it's dropped forever. And I at least do honestly hold out hope that Season 3 will touch on more of that. I really do. I genuinely do believe that. Next question from Thalandor46, who says, "Based on the in-game story and lore with what we got of Heart of Thorns, what do you think Season 3 is going to be about?" I actually answered this on another Q&A very recently, but I believe we're going to be dealing with Ratanova specifically with Timey, with that new area. I do think we're going to get some new maps, and all the other speculations I made therein, but I really do think the most obvious thing straight away is Glint's legacy, Timey and Ratanovus, and it will pick up from there, as well as, the fates of some of these characters that are currently a little bit in limbo, like Zoja and Logan. Next question is from Eamon Draper, who said, "Hey WP, out of all the new specializations, which ones have you played? And which one is your favorite? Is it Reaper? And in your opinion, which one adds most to the game in terms of playstyle? Are there any specializations that you don't like at all? Absolutely, Reaper adds the most in terms of playstyle that I've seen. Reaper adds an awful lot because you can play really satisfying, decent Condi Reapers. I played Condi Reaper in the raids, for example, as an incredibly powerful place in the second boss fight at the very least, and a good place in the third, in the Sabbather fight, through its use of Epidemica as its unique kind of angle. I've been playing a lot of PvP since Leagues came out on the Condi Reaper as well. But, you know, Reaper offers something to the MM builds. Reaper offers something to the flat damage builds. Obviously, that's its main theme as a flat damage thing. And kind of a bruisery build. Reaper is incredibly well-tuned. Maybe actually overpowered. Maybe that's why I like it so much, especially on the PvP side of things. It's got a really, really solid place. And it completely 180'd a class, right? Like, the poor Necromancer from the before, those days are going to look laughable where people are like, man, Necromancers have no place. You know, Reaper's really pulled things around for them in a fantastic way. It combined as well with the Lion's Arch changes, I would say, from earlier in the year. So I think Reaper, in terms of design, is probably my favorite. But I've also been enjoying a lot of Chronomancer. The main three I've been focusing on from this point are the light armor elite specializations. I played a ton of Tempest when the expansion first came out, and now I'm playing a ton of Reaper. I will move on to Chronomancer third and finally, but for now, you know, Reaper's really captured my heart, I would say, and you're right to guess it. But Divorce said, "Hey, WP, which class objectively, based on what the first raid encounter, do I think will have a place? Which class is?" Okay, objectively speaking, I don't think Warriors are going to get usurped anytime soon. They have great Condi damage against the large hitboxes. When they're playing the flat damage role, they've got absolutely brilliant party damage support in the way of phalanx strength and banners. It's very, very, very hard to replace the banners. The might can sort of be replaced elsewhere-ish, but, you know, they are really in a fantastic place. I think Warriors are going to be staples. I think Revenants, or Heralds specifically, with their incredibly high Fury uptime and Might uptime, complementing Phalanx Strength Warriors, as well as the Ferocity boost for everyone. In any flat damage comp, I think you're going to see a lot of Heralds. They've got a lot of quality of life, quick blinks in, good mobility, easy CCs on their utility skills for any break bar mechanics that arrive. Heavy armor with medium health, so they're not the craziest, most squishy things. Lots of life still coming out from them. They're just they're fantastic characters. They really are, and I think Heralds are really, really, really sturdy, getting seen a lot. And actually Druids as well. Now, when I say a Druid, absolutely, I do not mean healing power builds. I think Grace of the Land, which is the Druid trait that buffs everybody's flat damage. I think the Glyph that boosts people's flat damage. I think Frost Spirit, which boosts people's flat damage. I think Spotter, which gives everybody far more crits and allows less people to, you know, mix in Assassin's gear and whatever to get to that 100%. I think all this stuff makes Druids fantastic as well, and I think you see those as staples as well of many groups. I think you can be a bad Druid and run with a lot of healing power gear and put more pressure on the DPS meters for people, but when you get very good, absolutely playing very Zerky Druids is 100% going to be the thing as well. The other ones are more interchangeable, and you might think, well, why the hell didn't you just mention Chronomancer? There's an idea of Chronomancer tanking where you bump out you're like the control guy and you bump out tons and tons of quickness. But the truth is this, guys. The idea of a tank is becoming more and more marginalized. Less and less and less needed. Now, I say this because Sabbather, you never needed a tank in the first place. Not through any gear, any trait, nothing, right? Because all control was done through positioning. So you never needed it there. In Gw2, you might think, oh yeah, you need a tank to aggro them around. But we're already seeing groups DPS, Snowcrow specifically, it blew my mind, a video that I saw recently. DPS the second boss so hard, so fast, that once again you are skipping mechanics. Once again, this group, they didn't have to deal with any of the gliding sections, any of the pulling, so there's no need for a tank whatsoever there either. You know, you swap your tank for someone who's complete YOLO damage, and it pays off for you. You end up killing the boss with 3 minutes left on the clock. Now, granted, it's not comfortable, and it's basically perfect dodge rolling, perfect rotations, and I do not say that that's the best case scenario, but the idea of a tank, you know, it's very minimal. That's what I'm trying to get to. So, the Chronomancer tank angle straight away, I think, is limited a bit there. Chronomancers are fantastic for damage, don't get me wrong, but, and especially the high end, you're probably going to want one if you're really super min-maxing, but, not everybody does that, and that's something that I think our community really struggles with. Not everybody does that. I've cleared a lot of the raid content now, and, you know, often we don't have a Chronomancer at all. You don't need a Chronomancer. Not as bad, I would say at least, as you need, or will often really regret not taking a Druid, Warriors, and Heralds. It's just kind of my opinion, though. I think the worst class for raids, unquestionably, is Daredevil. Next question is from Xander Sinji. He said, hey WP, with the amount of content you're generating every week, how do you actually have time to play the game? What's the time commitment ratio between playing and video content production? All right, well, you guys will have noticed the last week or so, videos have been a lot more spotty, and you might think, oh, that's because Wooden Potatoes is playing loads. It's not. It's because Wooden Potatoes isn't playing very much at all. See, if you don't play very much, it's hard to be inspired and talk knowledgeably about certain topics, and as I explained earlier in the video, my goals for PvE have waned. I'm mostly just PvPing at the moment, which is a lot of fun with the leagues, and I've got an idea for a video for that, but, it's waning a little, and I've ended up focusing on other games, and so when I'm playing Guild Wars 2 a lot, it's actually quite easy, many times you can kind of double up. Like, I'll be playing in my own time, and if I think there's some cool footage going on, for example, while I'm just playing in my own time, just doing whatever, if something funny happened, or if I went to some vaguely interesting area, or something that I don't think people would have seen very much, there was something kind of pretty, or it was in a rare kind of personal story mission, I just record. And then what this means is, at the end of the day, after I've streamed, after I've done all that stuff, I've got a variety of topics, and I've got, like, relevant footage I can immediately drop in, right? So, like, you kind of can double up there a bit. It still doesn't cut down on the editing. It still doesn't cut down on many of the other things. And basically, YouTube is just a big game of trying to balance these things well. But I guess the main thing I want to just elaborate to you guys here and explain is the hard part isn't when you play the game a lot. When you play the game a lot, it's easy to stop at the end of the day and talk and have a lot of passion behind what you say and, have something interesting to put out. When you play less, when you're just doing your dailies, when you're not particularly going for any collections, you're not really meeting people, you're not having any experiences, not finding things to criticize or to find joy in, well, then you're sort of stuck at the end of the day with no inspiration, right? Or you have ideas and you're just kind of lukewarm about them. So yeah, I would say actually, I probably, for every minute you see me playing on videos, I've played maybe 2 or 3 times that in my own time. Next question is from Sebastian Devensharkberg Starter, who said, since you're streaming and present on Patreon, how's Guild Wars 2 changed for you? How's living changed? Has it changed? Oh, and what did Matt say about your success? This is really weird. As I said, I already recorded this video, and then it got deleted, so I have to do it again. And I feel like I'm repeating myself constantly. It's really weird. It's scary. All right, so how's Guild Wars 2 changed since I started streaming? I do think streams have enabled me to see a lot of cool stuff. If I wasn't streaming, I never would have been able to do that cool squad UI stuff for you guys. I never would have appreciated how broken Guild Wars 2 can be when there's a lot of players around. And it's okay. You won't really hear me complaining about this or anything or bringing it up as a particularly valid criticism, because the amount of people who can just throw up a stream and then, map cap something within 20 minutes or less is very, very, very minuscule. So the fact that so many dynamic events break when you've got 150 people at them, or hearts get ridiculously slow and difficult to complete, it doesn't mean so much. I've appreciated as well that when you stream, it can be difficult to test your builds, because people love zerging around you and just killing everything, and they don't actually care that you're trying to figure out builds. So there's kind of a weird thing with that, but streaming's kind of fun, and specifically, it taught me something about MMOs in general when it comes to streaming. So there is kind of a thing with Twitch where it's like, look, MMOs do not do good on Twitch. And specifically, a lot of people think about this with regard to esports. And you can absolutely make that argument. That's definitely a big thing. Like a giant MMO with so many RPG elements. How can that possibly work as a hyper-competitive 5v5 format game? They basically deserve to be different games. I actually agree with that, right? Like, that it's very, very difficult to meld those two worlds. And we've never really seen an MMO become esports. I mean, Christ, one of the biggest games, biggest MMO and biggest games flat out there, World of Warcraft, really has very little of a Twitch following, right? So it's kind of, is it silly for ArenaNet to want that for their MMO? Well, time will tell, right? But the other kind of side of this is MMOs aren't really great on Twitch, even for PvE. And you might think, oh, that's BS, Wooden Potatoes. What are you talking about? But it's true, they're really not. Think about how many MMOs you see often get quite high up on Twitch for streams. I'll tell you why. It's because your traditional MMO is incredibly restrictive when it comes to playing with lots of people. Guild Wars 2 is fairly unique in this. While a lot of stuff scales weirdly and can break when I've got 150 people running around me, the truth is I can at least run around with 150 people with me. Many of my streams have been like leveling up, going from level 1 to level 80. Leveling. And in other MMOs, those 150 people, they're stealing all your tags, all your resource nodes. They're stealing your drops. It's basically impossible to play. Content creators that have got large audiences simply cannot engage with their communities or stream because people will find them and they will zerg around them, and they will ruin their experience. And there are small elements of that in Guild Wars 2. You know, like when hearts scale slowly, it's basically because other people were interacting with stuff and it's not phased, and then you're kind of screwed, right? Or, you know, you get big collection events that scale up too much, and then you also get screwed through that. But Guild Wars 2 is a billion, million, trillion times better than any other MMO for that. And I think it's a bit of a shame that the game itself doesn't get higher for PvE, but it's an interesting thing, you know, that potentially any massive content creator, you know, don't look at like small fry like me, look at your favorite content creator who gets 1 million views a day, right? Because we're all subbed to someone like that. Imagine if they came to Guild Wars 2. There's actually more incentive for Guild Wars 2 than any other MMO. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. But it does allow us to engage, and I think a lot of us take that for granted. As to the other questions, how livings change, how other things have changed, I'll be putting updates on that stuff very soon. As I told you guys, the plan is to move out in the new year and kind of assess how things go after Heart of Thorn. Things have, you know, the boat gets rocked. I knew it was going to get rocked, but I'm going to move out after New Year, hopefully, no matter how bad finances get. And you guys over there are going to get all the good details there, so that's going to be pretty exciting. I've got some nice plans. Next question is from Ruby Rub, who says, "Hi, what's your favourite of the new mobs in Heart of Thorns? And which of the new enemies surprised you the most? The first time I encountered a Varen smoke scale with my Daredevil, I was in for an epic beatdown." So this is actually a pretty cool question. Which of the new mobs was my absolute favourite? I think this is a bit of a cop-out answer, but I think the Chuck are pretty incredible. Like, design-wise, right? They do a lot of stuff. They attack you from over 1,500 range. You can see the new AI at work before your very eyes. There is an achievement in one of the instances where you have to kill tons of Chuck. And you might think, oh, that's easy. Just round them all up, LOS them, blind them, and blow them up. And it just doesn't work. And they've all got interesting abilities. You know, they push that little bit of retail out. And it's fun, man. I like the design of the Chuck a lot. I think the enemy that surprised me the most, I don't know whether it quite counts, but the treasure mushrooms were really cool. One of my favorite moments, honestly, in the expansion was finding a treasure mushroom after I had learned how to detect stealth people. And just seeing how the devs had done that, you know, very fast-moving, very skittish enemies. That was cool. That was, you know, a good blend of new AI and many of their systems together. So can I really credit the enemy or just the design of the mastery? I'm not entirely sure. The other thing that did surprise me as well were the mushrooms with regard to how much damage they can do. You know, in those high-scale events, those mushrooms are really deadly. And it reminds me a lot as well. They're like after-death explosions of Afflicted Soul explosion from Cantha. And, of course, that's got a nice place in my heart. Even though I originally played factions, my first character was an assassin who was a squishy-ass guy that was being asked to be in melee all the time in the same expansion that released all these explosions when Mob died. Thanks for that, Arena. Next question is from Joshua Wetzel, who said, "I was always curious if the colours of the Raid Guardians had any significance in the lore. Is there some kind of relationship between colours and magic interior?" So there could be a connection. If the Bloodstone stuff does come true, if the White Mantle stuff does come true, if this is some gambit from the White Mantle to do something with the Massat, it could be true. As for the specific colours, I'm not entirely sure. I think that they're just colours for now with the Guardian. I think it'd be a bit silly to speculate too much further, but they could eventually, you know, show something more there. But I think it's a little earlier, and we should leave it there for now. Same as like with the Scarlet Big Bosses, right? Daniel Burbridge, Fingerlight, said, "Easy one after 20-plus paragraph questions. How panicked are you, realising the Q&A video is probably going to take far longer than your usual one?" Well, not that panicked, to be honest, because I knew I was going to do it in multiple parts. So no worries there. Next question is from Aaron Hiscock, who said, "Have you looked into the new recent theories of the uncategorized fractal and the remains of the Asura Sky City that we can see on top of Rata Nova? Somebody made an amazing Reddit post, researching it all, and found that the two chunks of the city lined up perfectly." Okay, so this is actually really, really cool, and I do think that there is merit to these theories. So for those out of the loop, before Heart of Thorns, we of course had a fractal, which showed a weird, like, floating Asuran city, and Dessa gets very distressed there, and there's a lot of weird things going on, like with the cat golems, and there's an insane guy. When Heart of Thorns released, they actually updated a little bit of dialogue there, suggesting that, you know, we should maybe pay a bit more attention to it. And at the same time, they gave us the story of Rata Novus, and the story is that some people escaped from Rata Novus. On the map, we also see what would appear to be another giant Asuran city. And if you go interior 3D and look at that giant Assyrian city, it's the exact same model that's being used in the uncategorized fractal. So, are we getting the story of the uncategorized fractal? Now, you might think, oh, but Wooden Potatoes, the uncategorized fractal is obviously just a weird dimension thing, and it means nothing. Actually, it does. And it's not a potential future either. See, when it originally was released, the devs were asked on the forums, hey, what's going on here? And we were specifically told that every single fractal is set in the past. Some fractals are kind of recent history, some are ancient history, and I think they even use the term mythic history as well, right? This is an actual story. Something is going on here. I do believe we're going to see connections here. I do think maybe even Season 3 or 4 will deal with this, especially considering that that achievement I talked about already does lead you basically to the doorstep of this place. I think there is something to it. However, I would also say the whole Tyria 3D thing, don't look into that too closely. I don't think that they're using the same thing because it's the same story. It might be, right? But I also think that, you know, you're the devs, right? You're designing a giant thing that's appearing off screen that no player is ever actually going to see unless they break out of the map in a weird way. You need a big floating thing there. What are you going to do? Create a giant new unique asset? Is that a valuable way to spend time? Or do you just copy-paste something that you already had elsewhere because it's not meant to be scrutinized too much? I think you do the latter of the two. Next question is from Doom Fairy, who said, if you could make one change to Heart of Thorns, what would it be? All right, this is a cop-out. Can it be story? Can it be, I would change this, I would add more story. Can I say that? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be cheeky and I'm going to be like, all right, as I add more story, I'm going to add this, and this, right? And it'll be kind of like, you know, when you make a wish to a genie that, oh, I wish I had a new house. And what you're secretly wishing for is, I wish I had a, 3,000 bricks plus X amount of tiles plus cement plus insulation plus, and so on, so on, so on, right? Can I do a bulk big change? That'd be really cool. Next question is from Zachary, who said, hey, WP, are you overwhelmed? Not particularly. I don't think when I first did Patreon, if that's what you're talking about, yes, I was very overwhelmed. But at the moment, no, I'm not particularly overwhelmed. Next and final question is from Michael Olas, who is basically asking about the idea of having lots of accounts, all right? And they say having more accounts like this can make a player more self-sufficient, not necessarily economically sufficient. No, here's the question. Is multi-boxing in Guild Wars 2 allowed or not? I've tried to find the answer, but I'm not sure. I was soloing fractals with my Necro, and a second character could possibly speed things up. Actually, yeah, I saw a video of somebody solo before Heart of Thorns all the way through a level 50 fractal, but they had to character swap a lot. So what they did was they had an alternate account or a friend, I guess, logged in to the fractals, just kind of idling there. And by logging into the fractals and idling, they kept the instances open when they swapped their main character to, you know, assess what problems they were going to come up against. Multi-boxing was a thing in Guild Wars 1. I can't remember what it's called, but I used to use that extensively. I actually used to... There was an elite end game area, which was 8-man party sizes. You could 3-man it. So what I used to do was I used to have my main character, who was the tank, the 600 tank, who I used to play on one instance on my main monitor. On my second monitor, I had another instance of the game running, multi-boxing, where I had my ranger, my famine ranger, and I'd play both characters at the same time. And the famine ranger had a hero attached to him, which would be the bonder. And so you'd have all the enchantments spread, and it would work perfectly. I could farm it on my own, manipulating 3 characters across 2 accounts. And then what that meant as well, though, was that I had space for another 5 accounts to be in the instance. And that's what I ended up doing. I bought loads of different Night Up 4 accounts for like £2-3 each, leveled them all up, got to the end of the game, and I'd just load them all on my poor PC, which would really struggle under the pressure. I'd have 5 of them AFK. I'd bring 2 of them along, clear the Foundry of Failed Creations, the City of Talker, and Ravenheart Gloom. And then once I was done, I'd just run all these accounts along in a big chain, open in all the chests, and just reap massive rewards. Theoretically, that stuff's possible in Guild Wars 2 as well. In theory, all right, this is never going to happen in Guild Wars 2. You're not going to be able to solo or 3-man raids, right? I am curious about when we start seeing low-man raid comps, though. This is going to be interesting. Or, like, all of one class. But, let's go to Bizarro World for a second. Let's go 10 years in the future, and the power creep is so blindingly phenomenal, and ArenaNet have abandoned all their old raid content that you can now solo it, right? You could, in theory... one raid from clearing just a single boss in a raid generate how much money was it that went into the economy when Call of the Mist is up? 100 gold? Right? That's a lot of cash that would just go straight into your pocket. So there is a way of manipulating this on various scales. But is there any actual program to multi-box? I don't know, and I don't know what the devs' official stance on it is either. So I'd urge a little bit of caution there. But it's interesting stuff, and it was a part of the history of this franchise, at the very least, as hopefully I've demonstrated. Well, there you go, guys. We're going to have one more of these super Q&As, and then I'm going to open up for questions again. So if you'd like to get in on that, if you'd like to support me in these, you know, days as basically people flood away from Guild Wars 2 and the channel in general, it would be much appreciated, and I hope to give you as good of a response as I possibly can. There's a link in the description. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you had some good chat about Guild Wars 2, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good evening, guys.